I want to thank you, shukran, Dr. Ali Al Nuaimi from the United Arab Emirates. Thank you so much for being so gracious to do an interview here with our news network.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Now, you're in Abu Dhabi right now?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm in Jerusalem. So you and I have become not just acquainted, but I think we've become friends over the last several years. And I've deeply appreciated the chance to ask you questions and get to know your perspective. And now here we are at this really historic moment. And I got several questions for you. I have many, but I'll try to limit myself. But thank you for taking some time, especially with an Israeli journalist based in Jerusalem. And of course, this will be seen both by our All Arab news community and by our All Israel news community. And no time like the present, right? As United Arab Emirates is making this historic, really a dramatic moment of peace. And I just want to start there. First of all, what's the United Arab Emirates message to the Israeli people, and why are you guys making this decision now?
First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And when it comes to the Emirati-Israeli peace treaty, actually, it's an opportunity not only for the two nations, but for the whole region. My message to the Israeli people that we all are part of the region, of one region, and we all were a victim of a narrative that divided us and tried to exclude some of our rights on both sides. First of all, maybe you heard me several times saying that Jews and Christians, their roots are in this area, in this region. They belong here, actually. And so that what we saw that, several generations have been suffering for decades because of wars, because of the hate narrative that's coming from both sides against the other. And we think in the UAE, because of the achievement that we were able to make related to, coexistence, related to tolerance, related to acceptance of others, and, promoting a lifestyle, promoting a diversity that we are proud of and is not available in the region, that we have a model that we want to copy in the region. This is why, we believe in our message. It's a peace message. It's not a political treaty. It's yesterday I said about it, it's a treaty of coexistence. It's a treaty between two nations. It's not a treaty related to between two governments only. No, we feel that, the UAE people are, ready to make the right move, the next level with the Israeli people to come together, actually, to try to create a better future for both nations and for the whole region, and to work together, actually, to take a message of peace to the world.
What's interesting to me about this, Dr. Al Nuaimi, is that, well, first of all, thank you. As somebody who lives here, the idea that the first Arab nation since the Kingdom of Jordan back in 1994 has decided to make peace with Israel. I think that, this is a game-changing development, and I think it's very, very encouraging. One thing that I think is interesting, and I think a number of analysts are beginning to watch, and you just said it, is this is not just going to be a peace treaty in the sense that we've actually never been at war with you or you with us, but it may be a much warmer, true normalization than maybe we have to the extent that we want with the Egyptians or the Jordanians. Your crown prince is talking about trade, tourism, technology, investment, sports exchanges, cultural exchanges, direct flights, not just an embassy, in both countries. Talk to me about what that is. You're a businessman as well as a close advisor to the government and, of course, to the Crown Prince. What does that mean to you? What do you expect will happen?
Well, you see, let me talk as a UAE national. Okay. I prepare that because, once the news came out about the treaty, we saw what's happening on social media in the UAE. Maybe in some countries it was a shocking news because it's a breaking news. But what we found out in the UAE...
I'm sorry, you said it's a breakthrough? Is that what you said? Or break from the past?
No, because it was a breaking news.
Oh, breaking news,
yes. Okay. In many countries as a shocking news at the same time. But what we found out in the UAE that especially on social media, that there was a blessing support for these initiatives. Because we already believe in coexistence. We have in the UAE, we have many Christians, we have Hindu, we have Buddhists, we have Jews, we have Sikh, we have Baha'i, and they are all living in peace and harmony and enjoying, a freedom of worship, a freedom of practicing what they believe in the UAE.
Yes, so, I've seen it.
Yes, so our people were ready, actually, to accept this, and not only to accept it, but also to support it, because we are part of a region, as have been suffering because of terrorism, extremism, wars. But in the UAE, we were able to develop, a country where there was security, stability, and prosperity for everyone. So, what I believe in is this: it's different than the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. It's different than the peace treaty between Israel and Jordan. What we are bringing now, it's something different, with a different perspective. Once when Sadat and Begin signed the peace treaty, there was a movement in Egypt and in the Arab world against normalization. The same thing happened in Jordan. The good thing, what we see now, that most of the Arabs are supporting the UAE-Israeli peace treaty, except who? Those, who are part of these terrorist organizations. Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Iranian regime, and Erdogan, who are supporting these terrorist groups. And unfortunately, Abbas joined them now. Instead, of seeing this as an opportunity, what we saw that Abbas moved to the other side. So, but in the UAE and also within the Palestinian, we have about 400,000 Palestinians living in the UAE for decades. We talk to them. They think that we did the right things. They see hope in what we are doing, and they are very supportive, of this initiative.
Has there been any polling done publicly yet of how the people of the United Arab Emirates, both the citizens and maybe the foreign workers, how people are responding yet?
No, I'm not aware of any poll that has been done. But you see, I am very active on social media, and I monitor what's happening in the social media. So what I see in the UAE, I see a huge support for this initiatives and blessing for this initiative.
Now, you mentioned, of course, Palestinian chairman and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas as being very, very opposed to this. He's used very strong language. It's a betrayal and stab in the back and these things, he and his colleagues. What would be your message, Dr. Ali Al Nuaimi, to the Palestinian people and to the Palestinian leadership of why, what is your message to them?
You see, my message first, uh, they have to have one argument. I'm talking about the leadership. What they are saying, well, we are the representative of the Palestinian people. No one should talk on our behalf. Okay? This is one. At the same time, what they are saying, well, UAE, you should tell the Israeli to do this and this and this. Our response is this: look, we worked very hard to bring this opportunity to the table, to the negotiation table. You come and sit with the Israeli. You are claiming that you represent the Palestinian people and you don't want anyone to talk on your behalf. So who will sit with the Israeli and engage in a negotiation? It's you. This is something that you see how this leadership actually, they are not looking for a solution for the problem. They don't believe in a peace treaty they already signed. What they are saying, you shouldn't do a peace treaty with Israel. Why? They are doing, they did it. They signed the treaty. And, they are condemning what UAE done. And they are praising what Erdogan and Turkey are doing. So I think, we need to create a narrative to talk directly to the Palestinian people. We need to have a narrative that will gain their mind and their heart. We need, to speak directly to them, and don't let Abbas media be in between us. And I think it's very important that the Israeli also, approach the Palestinian people directly to show them the added value of having peace in the region.
So the leaders of the United Arab Emirates don't claim to be speaking for the Palestinians, right? They're just saying, listen, it's been a long time. You're not talking to the Israelis. You won't negotiate. So we're going to do our own agreement, but we still support the Palestinian cause, right? You're asking Israel not to annex the territory. You're encouraging the two-state solution. Do I have that correct?
Yes, that's correct. But you see, in order to get to find a solution, you have to bring the leadership, the Palestinian leadership, to the negotiating table. This is now the issue, actually. And we are now getting calls from different world leaders saying, could you tell us what the Palestinians want? We don't understand what Abbas wants. Okay. Now he's saying, we want the two-state solution to be on the table and start from there. Now it's there. Why is he refusing to come and sit on the negotiation table? So this is why I am emphasizing that we need together to approach the Palestinian people directly and show them the added value of this peace treaty between UAE and Israel, and what the added value to the Palestinian people.
Let me ask you a question about our first time that we ever met. The Crown Prince, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, had invited me to bring a delegation of evangelical Christian leaders to come, the first evangelical delegation ever to be invited to come meet with the leadership of the United Arab Emirates. Of course, we did that in October of 2018, and it was fascinating for us. This is where we met you. This is where we met the Crown Prince and other key leaders, including your Minister of Tolerance. I believe the United Arab Emirates is the only country that I'm aware of that has a Minister of Tolerance trying to encourage interfaith relations and so forth.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious, two things. Let's start with, do you know why the Crown Prince decided to invite a group of evangelicals for the first time in the history of the country?
Well, this is something unique about the UAE leadership. They always look forward. They always have a vision. You remember when we met, Rose, I mentioned this to you. I told you, I am really happy that you are here because we want to know about you, from you, and we want you to know about us from us.
Right.
So yeah, this is what the Crown Prince, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, wanted. He wanted you, instead of hearing about the UAE from outside, you come, visit the UAE, talk to the people, see, you remember you visited the churches in Abu Dhabi, you talk to the people. It's not only the leadership.
Right.
So, and seeing is believing. And I believe that visit, actually, through that initiative, during these meetings, we were able to develop bridges of respect, of trust, of friendship. Since when, we are coordinating so many things, working together, sharing a vision, actually, not, for both sides, but also for the region and for the world. Yeah. And, I remember the Crown Prince sent me to Brazil last year. When I went there, I met with the president. I mentioned your name. I mentioned your visit, because this is the way that, you bring different groups together. You build bridges of respect and trust and love, and, you actually praise the common values that we share together. Mm-hmm. And the challenges that, we need to work together to face these challenges.
Well, I appreciate that. And I had the opportunity to meet a private meeting with the president of Brazil last year with a group of evangelicals, but it was after you guys. I actually met you first and then President Bolsonaro later. But a little bit more on that. I appreciate it because I think one of the principles that you and I, and of course the Crown Prince, are discussing in recent years is you don't have to agree on everything politically or theologically or in other areas in order to still build a friendship and a trust. You may have strong disagreements. Obviously, Muslims and evangelical Christians don't see eye to eye on all issues, obviously related to the Bible or the Quran. But that doesn't mean we can't be friends. And I was particularly struck that the Crown Prince didn't just invite evangelicals, but he invited the head of the delegation, myself, as an Israeli citizen. Because as you'll recall, the meeting that we had, the 2-hour meeting in the palace with the Crown Prince, that conversation was supposed to be off the record. But I think we can say, it's okay to say now one piece of it for sure. And that was that I asked the Crown Prince, I said, listen, no Arab country has made a peace agreement with Israel since 1994. And that seems like a long time. And as Christians pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the way the Bible tells us to pray, we are looking for the next Arab country, the next Arab leader to do that, to make peace. And we're not saying that Israel's doing everything right, but we're just saying that, listen, we want to make peace with more Arab countries. And I said, would you consider doing this? And the Crown Prince leaned forward and he said, Joel, I am ready to make peace with Israel. And we were very shocked that he said that. Our objective was simply to sort of plant some seeds to encourage. But when he said that, you may recall, because you were sitting right next to him, that I said, well, listen, I have no political power. I'm not wealthy. I'm just a citizen of Israel and the United States, but I'm also a resident of Jerusalem. And just as a person, as a friend, I would like to invite you, Your Highness, to come and visit Jerusalem. Come visit the holy sites that are important to you as a Muslim. Come visit the sites that are important to us as Jews and Christians, and come and begin the process of making peace. And he again leaned forward and said, Joel, that day is coming sooner than you think. And we were again amazed. So already in October of 2018, the Crown Prince and other leaders in the country had made a decision, a strategic decision to make peace. And the question for them, as we discussed then, was sort of what are the process? What's the steps to go forward? Do you know when, but even more importantly, how the Crown Prince came to that decision, even several years ago, that it's time to find a way to make peace with Israel?
Well, our crown prince is a visionary person, and he has the courage, to take the hard decision. And, he believed in that at the end, we as a nation, UAE, we should, for decades, we carried, the mission of countering extremism in the region and in the world. And you know that, I brief you about what we were doing.
Yes.
And, in order to achieve that, we have to promote peace and look for partners who believe in peace. And, if you want to have peace in the region, you have to create peace with Israel. This is the first step. This is a strong message. And this is why I said he's willing to take the hard decision. He has the courage to do that. And, because this is an issue that have been there for decades, you need to shake the region. So he believed that we should do this move, but, he was waiting for the right time. So, when he saw the opportunity, he didn't miss it. And he made that decision.
Well, the Bible speaks of an interesting verse that says, everything is beautiful in its time.
Yes.
And there is a time and season for everything, a time for war and a time for peace. And I'm certainly encouraged that your crown prince believes this is the time for peace. I know you do. Two other last questions. I appreciate your time. And I definitely want to interview you again in the future about the efforts of the UAE to counter extremism and violent extremism in particular. That's an important topic, and you're an expert on that. Two last questions for now. One is, can you tell us when the signing ceremony is going to be with the Crown Prince coming to Washington and doing an event with the Israeli leadership at the White House?
Well, I believe it's in September, but which date, I don't know it.
Okay.
But
so that's
it's
still
in September.
Discussions.
In September, yes.
Okay. And going back to my previous point about inviting the Crown Prince to Jerusalem, you'll recall also that I wrote an article in the Jerusalem Post, an open letter. I wasn't allowed at the time to say exactly what I had said, what he had said to me, but I said publicly, please come and visit and start the process. So do you anticipate that the leadership, including perhaps the Crown Prince himself, will eventually come to Jerusalem?
Yes. You see, when you talk about peace, we are talking about comprehensive peace. We are talking about, breaking all those walls and boundaries and building these bridges. Mm-hmm. So for our relation, the sky is the limit for our relation. One thing that I want to mention, actually, that we need to work hard on countering the hate narrative in the region and worldwide. And it is a shared responsibility. And it is the real challenge that I see it since the announcement of the UAE-Israeli peace treaty.
Well, I agree with you on that. And as you know, this is why we have begun these two websites, All Israel News and All Arab News, in order to continue to provide original and exclusive interviews like this, original reporting and analysis, to link to all the really interesting and truthful news and reporting in the region. But in order to have a perspective that encourages peace and cooperation, even with disagreements, rather than, I think, what's coming out of Iran, what's coming out of the Turkish media, unfortunately, what's coming out of Qatar and Al Jazeera, are messages of extremism often and division, not encouragement towards peace. So that's why we've started these two news sites. And I know that for some Arabs, both Muslims and Christians, they're not going to be comfortable yet being interviewed on All Israel News. That's why we created All Arab News, because we want to give voice to a wide range of people, both the powerful and the powerless. But I want to thank you particularly, Dr. Al Nuaimi, for being willing to do an interview that's going to appear on both sites. You are speaking directly to the Arab people, you're speaking directly to Israelis, and you're speaking to evangelicals and many others who are going to be very interested in your perspective. And any comments finally on the importance of all Israel news and all Arab news in terms of the type of news gathering and information that we need in this region?
Well, when it's come to the relation, the UAE-Israel relation, there is the political file, and there is others. And in our political file, there will be issue. We don't expect 100% agreement,
right.
But we shouldn't let our political difference hijack the other files, which is we should make sure we create a concrete relation in these different areas. So my message is this: we understand there will be political differences, even in one family. There might be different political views,
right.
But our vision in the UAE, we will not let some of our political differences, stop us from working hand in hand in the other files.
Well, shukran. And I look forward to coming back to Abu Dhabi and spending time with you and His Highness to learn more. And of course, I look forward very much. I pray for the day that you both and your team come and visit here in Israel as a whole country, and certainly Jerusalem, the holy city that's so important to Jews, to Christians, and to Muslims. I look forward to, and especially to welcoming you. Thank you so much for doing this interview.